Hello chess friends and welcome to your Art of Chess channel and welcome to the round 2 of the FIDE candidates in 2022. We're following now the derby of the day. It's of course the match between Jan Nepomniachtchi against Fabiano Caruana. So it's the derby of course of the winners of the first round because both of them won their first games in this event, and also it's a derby of former World Championship challengers because of course both of them played their World Championship matches against Magnus Carlsen. So let's check out now what happened. It was really a tough battle because this was, I think, a special game. Who wins now this game has, I think, great chances to even win the whole thing, because in my honest opinion, really Jan Nepomniachtchi and Fabiano Caruana are the top favorites. So it's also of course the derby of the favorites of the super event. So let's check out now the game. So Jan Nepomniachtchi opened with the move e4. Fabiano's response was e5. We have knight to f3, knight to c6, and after move bishop to c4 we have now the Italian game on the board. And as I said, in this event we'll see many Ruy Lopez, many Italian games, we'll see many Queen's Gambit declines, we'll see maybe even many Nimzo Indian defenses. The common strategical ideas, I think, work for both sides in this types of positions. So both of them don't want to risk anything, they want to play really a solid game. So here in the continuation, knight to f6, we have the two knights defense, d3, classical system here, and after bishop to c5, here the game transposed into the so-called gioco piano. So we have kingside castling, d6, and after c3 the normal preparation here is of course the move b4, but also in the continuation of the game to push through with the move d4. So we have here a6 by Fabiano Caruana. He's of course liberating his bishop, he's creating some breathing spaces for the piece. So in the continuation a4, because black could also maybe expand here on the queen side with the potential b5 move, so that's why a4 is a beautiful prophylactic move. So we have bishop to a7, we have a rook to e1, and now h6 by Fabiano. He's not allowing here some pinning ideas. This could be very annoying. So bishop to g5 would be the threat, and then maybe to maneuver somehow the bishop, the knight maybe a3, then c2, maybe e3, and then followed with knight to d5. This could be very risky. So that's why here after move h6, which was of course a beautiful prophylactic move, we have here knight to d2, and now Fabi immediately attacks the position. It was a surprise for me, I have to say, because I always considered Fabi to be a great positional player, but when it comes to aggressive play, he's not, I think, one of my favorite players. So he's really surprised me here with this aggressive move g5. This move has been played many times in chess history, but you can also play solid kingside castling and similar stuff. But here Fabi announced probably also sort of a home preparation, because from this point on Fabi will really attack the position. So in the continuation, we have b4, we have knight to g4, and this is actually a move that, for instance, it's not really loved by the top engine, but it's a beautiful move. I think this move is showing that Fabi goes for the win here. He's attacking immediately the pawn on f2. Of course, this pawn can be defended, but it creates really already a dynamic game, and this is actually also sort of a theoretical novelty, because this position has never been reached in chess history. At least I'm not seeing this position in the database. So very aggressive play by Fabi in an early stage of the game. You have to protect now your pawn on f2. You don't want to play, of course, rook to f1, because you have already played with the rook. So that's why here Jan Nepomniachtchi played rook to e2, and again a very aggressive move by Fabi, queen to f6. And this move I really love, because look at this, the knight is a little bit paralyzed, the knight is trapped. So basically the queen took here the square for the knight, because for instance if h3 happens, you don't have any good squares for the piece, but actually h3 is not working here. And that's why I think this is a homemade preparation here by Fabiano. He has, I think, somewhere this line studied at home. After move h3, actually what would happen, this wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show why this move h3 wouldn't be a possibility. Knight to f2, rook to f2, bishop to f2, king to f2, and you see now the king is decoy to the f file, and now the serious threat is h5 followed with g4. So you could also lose the knight, and what you have to do, you have to step back here with the king towards the center. If you play here towards the king side, then with g4 this position will be opened, the h file will be opened. You have to get away with your knight, and I think black could have really some fun on the h file, creating maybe a rook and queen battery. So that's why you would be forced to play the move king to e2 Although when it comes to computer evaluations, this should be an equal game, but I really would not love to play now this position from white perspective with the king on e2. I think this would be a messed up position to play. So that's why after move queen to f6, you see h3 is not working. What the best I think move here is to move queen to f1 followed with h3, and here Nepo didn't react correctly. He played queen to e1, where the queen is again a little bit paralyzed. There is always also the threat bishop to f2 with a direct threat against the queen. Here in the continuation we have now queen to g7 by Fabiano Caruana, which is a beautiful choice, I think, because he plays now the queen where already the king is now. When maybe the g file gets open, then there are maybe some threats on the g file. So the queen is really annoying now to handle. So in the continuation we have knight to f1 by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He is trying now to get here this knight on g3, then also to place it on f5. But we have to also say the bishop is always waiting here. If you want to play knight to f5, the bishop will be traded off for the knight. In the continuation here Fabi simply castles, and now knight to g3. We have knight to e7. Here Fabi is also trying to reroute his knight on f4. This could be also a very powerful square, and now comes one of the critical moments of the game. Here Jan Nepomniachtchi played a very aggressive move d4. This was really unnecessary because you can play, I think, here h3, then kick away the knight. Knight to f6 has to be played, and now d4. The difference between d4 immediately and with this h3 move is that now you see the knight is standing in the way of the queen, so the queen is not attacking anymore the d4 square. It's a huge difference. d4 early causes now many problems because Fabi simply took. We have e takes d4, c takes d4, and here knight to c6. Look at this. This knight is attacked. Even if you try here d5, it's not a problem. We'll simply play here queen to a1 and you lose the rook. So that's why it's not possible to anymore defend this the pawn on d4. You can play maybe bishop to b2, but black will simply take. Knight takes d4, everything will be traded off, and white simply lost the pawn. Although we have to also say there are maybe some weaknesses here in front of the king, maybe f5, h5, g6. Also the square f6 is a weakness, but I think this position can be easily defended for black, especially because of the fact, as we said, if the knight jumps on f5, we will simply take it out from black's perspective, so the knight cannot be included into the attack. As we said, that's I think a little bit weird move here, in my opinion, the move d4 immediately by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He simply sacrificed the pawn, but I wasn't really sure about his compensation for the lost pawn. So as we said, Fabi accepted the challenge, played simply knight to c6, and has now triple attack against the weak pawn on d4. So we have here rook to a3, so Jan Nepomniachtchi gets all of the potential range of the queen, and now here Fabi simply takes. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop to d4, and we have now a new position in which Fabi grabbed the pawn. And okay, the evaluation is again about equal, so the engine also likes white's position because of the fact that we have here powerful bishop, still the opportunity to include the knight into the game. Also the rook could be very dangerous if the rook now starts to jump on f3, maybe on h3, especially on the square h3. I think it could be very dangerous because we have also a weakness on h6. So as I said, it's not so easy, of course, for black to play the game, but Fabi showed already some good moves here in this game, and I think Fabi was probably satisfied with the outcome of this tactical sequence. So in the continuation we have h3 finally by Jan Nepomniachtchi, getting rid of the knight. We have knight to e5, a beautiful square for the piece now, and here we have bishop to a2. Of course, Jan Nepomniachtchi doesn't want to give up his powerful bishop because the light square bishop is actually his best minor piece on the board. So we have c5, and this is a good move by Fabi, getting rid of the space advantage that black faces now many times here on the queen side. White has expanded here, so that's why c5 breaks the only advantage here that white has in the continuation of the game. So we have here b takes c5, we have bishop to c5 with the direct threat against the rook, but also the bishop stays very active, especially the f2 weakness is also something that bothers, I think, white in the continuation of the game. So we have here rook to b3, and now comes a new beautiful move by Fabi, and this was a special move here. I think Fabi showed really his class. He played a beautiful b5, and the problem about the b5 move is that actually after 8x b5 you cannot take the pawn because you get this one, bishop to h3, and this is now the cool part. If you take, of course, then you get here the beautiful knight to f3, because the rook from b3 got deflected now from the square f3, so the rook is not covering anymore the square. So now actually this fork could work. Of course, white doesn't have to take out the bishop, but as I said, you don't want to lose also this very important pawn on h3, because in the near future black could push the pawn further with the g4 and similar stuff. So that's why you don't want to lose, of course, a very important pawn that's protecting your king. So really beautiful move b5, and here of course Nepo didn't fall for this. He's played simply knight to f5, included now the knight into the game. We have queen to f6, we have king to h2. Although here, for instance, h4 would be much more interesting. h2, king to h2 is a little bit too passive. The only advantage I think that white is here is, of course, maybe here the attack on the queen side, but also the very nice activity by the bishop pair, especially because, as we said, that this is a hook. So this pawn structure h6 g5 is the so-called hook. So you want to break the hook. So that's why I think h4 would be much more interesting to play here for white. For instance, if you try bishop to f5, okay, we can also take h takes g5. Look at this, h takes g5, okay, it takes f5, but now g4 has to be played. You don't have time to take out here the piece, because bishop to b1 will happen, and now the bishop here will work. Both of these bishops will aim towards the king side, will include the rook into the game on g3. So it's, I think, strategically lost game here for black. So that's why maybe h4 would be much better, but the king to h2 was played by Nepo. He played a more solid move because he probably realized that something went wrong in his positions, and he wanted to maybe play a solid game, maybe hope for a draw. So after move b takes a4 was played, we have rook to g3, king to h7, getting out of the range of the rook on the g file. We have queen to d1, and now bishop to d7, simply protecting the pawn on a4. We have rook to c2, and now bishop to f5. Finally, Fabi had enough of this knight because he wanted to play now much more free with his pieces. After move e takes f5, we have now rook from a to b8, now occupying, of course, the only open file, which is, of course, the b file. So in the continuation, we have queen to h5, and here Jan Nepomniachtchi announced an aggressive attack against his pawn on g5, because now the serious threat is bishop to g5. You cannot take with the queen because of the rook, and also you cannot take with the pawn because of the activity by the queen here on the h file. So you have to play rook to g8, and in the continuation now Fabi tried bishop to b2. You have to, of course, also paralyze the knight, because the knight could be very dangerous with some discoveries. So here bishop to b2, also pinning the knight. What also is Jan Nepomniachtchi trying to do, he has the opportunity to play bishop takes e5, and then also to take out the pawn on f7. So it's also a serious threat. Here comes the new critical moment of the game. Here what Fabi actually did, he played now rook to e8. He tried to protect his knight, and actually the game went into a perpetual, and the game, unfortunately for the beauty of chess, ended with a draw. But actually there was maybe just a beautiful opportunity for Fabi to make something out of this game. What Fabi should have maybe played is this aggressive method, rook takes b2, and it's of course very hard to see. I think here in this particular position Fabi had around 10 minutes on the clock, so it was of course very risky. I still think that he can be satisfied with the draw with the black pieces against a very important player like Jan Nepomniachtchi, but rook to b2 would be very interesting, because look at this, if rook takes b2 happens, then we have a3, and the problem is now that the rook actually doesn't have good squares. For instance, if you try here to stay on this b file, the problem is this one, you lose the pawn on f2, and you have to play maybe something like this, rook to a3, but now d5 is the beautiful move, and this was probably really hard to see. This line that I'm showing you is just a really wild stockfish line, because after move bishop to d5, the problem is now you get queen to d6, and you have a double attack here against the bishop, but also you're threatening some nasty discoveries here with the move knight to f3. So this would be probably immediately a losing game. Also look at this, the rook is hanging, so this is simply too much to handle. So d5 was, I think, the beautiful move that Fabi unfortunately unfortunately missed. Even if you play here something like rook to c3, if you stay maybe in the game like this, again d5 will happen. Again, you don't have time. And now look at this, the knight is very, very dangerous here. Again, we have some discoveries, we have the opportunity to take out the rook. The most important thing about this move d5 is that you are covering the long diagonal for the bishop, so you have this problems around the square f7. Now with the move d5, you're solving every problem about this move. So as I said, this was maybe a way to go here for Fabiano Caruana to sacrifice the rook for the exchange. Here rook to b2, now with a3, even if you play something like rook to d1, rook to d2, you can even play queen to f5. Now everything is glued together. Look at this compact position. The evaluation is almost +2 here for black, which is really wild, but unfortunately for maybe the beauty of chess, both of them played this perpetuals and the game ended in a draw. So really, really wild game. I think in this game Fabi showed more. He should be probably unsatisfied with the outcome. When it comes before the game, I think that Fabi would be satisfied to play a draw against Jan Nepomniachtchi, but after the game I think he can be a little bit disappointed because he had everything in his hands, and he maybe could have won the game against a direct opponent, against a direct challenger for this beautiful throne for the FIDE candidates in 2022. So really, really great game. I enjoyed it really a lot because Fabi played really aggressive chess here. That's what we love to see. I think we had really so far a beautiful candidates. Most of the time the candidates is a little bit boring because no one wants to risk anything, but Fabi risked here immediately in an early stage of the game, spiced up the game with the move knight to g4, threatened always around the square f2. Really, really beautiful game, and I think this shows that we'll have a beautiful candidate in 2022. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game like I did. If you want to see some other games that we have covered so far, check out also our previous analysis with a beautiful game played by Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces. Here's also the link of the game, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.